everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Badass Confidence Coach podcast. Today, we're talking about thoughtfulness or the lack thereof.
Why are you looking at me?
No, you're not thoughtful.
I'm not thoughtful?
I just think it's a different topic, and it's one that I don't hear about very much. I mean, I think that there are different iterations of the topic of thoughtfulness. I think we hear a lot about it today in people talking about gratitude, selflessness. But this came out of a really interesting conversation I had with a client last week, and the topic came up of thoughtfulness because this person was talking about their partner. And, it came out of a conversation actually around love languages. What's your love language? What's their love language? And this person didn't know what that was, didn't know about, Gary Chapman's love languages. So we had gone over them a couple of times in this session the week prior and then this last week. And in doing that deep dive about that person's love language, we started to talk about how my client's partner's not always the most thoughtful person in the way she wants this person to be thoughtful. And then we went down this rabbit hole of, thoughtful people who are not thoughtful. It was interesting. So I started to take notes around this because I thought, I don't think I've had a conversation like this before. Not in this way. So I wanted to do an episode on, how can you be more thoughtful? How can, all of us be maybe a little bit more thoughtful towards other people? And that's a little bit different from gratitude. I think it's so important. And a lot of times, and I was thinking after the session, like, I'm not always thoughtful. And I think there's 3 buckets here. I think that there's people who are just really thoughtful, just always just really good at thinking about others and what they need and what they like. Acts of service is one. I have a sister who's really thoughtful of other people. She's just so good at it. She thinks about things in a way that's different from me. I'm thoughtful in that I will give you the time. I will give you the space and the breadth to talk about what's going on in your life. She may not do that as much. She's a person who's going to, make a meal for you, send you a really beautiful card. I don't do that as much. I love that she does it. And I always think to myself, wow, why can't I be more like that? But I know that I have gifts of thoughtfulness in other ways.
So I think you have to start with defining it, right? Because I could think you're thoughtful and someone else might look at you and be like, really?
Well, here's how, and this is the conversation that we got into last week. And I said, I think that there's 3 buckets here. So I'm curious what you think. There's just the thoughtful bucket, people who are just thoughtful. And then there's the next bucket is people who can be thoughtful, but are not always thoughtful. And it depends on, and I think I fall in this bucket. I think it depends on the stress in their lives. I think it depends on what's going on, how much activity or busyness is on their plate. I think if they're going through a crisis, they're not always going to be thoughtful of other people because understandably so, they're taken up with what's going on in their lives at that time. And so that might be someone in calmer waters and more relaxed times can be thoughtful and is thoughtful. But let's say they're going through a transition, maybe there be a work, maybe there's something that's bubbling to the surface in their marriage, their partnership, maybe there's something going on with one of their kids, maybe they're taking care of their parents, maybe you name it, maybe there's financial stress. They're not going to be as thoughtful of other people because they're really all up in their own head, understandably so, like I just said, about what's happening in their lives. That's the second bucket. In the third bucket, there are people who are just self-centered. They're just self-centered individuals. They're not thoughtful of others. They don't really think to be thoughtful of others. They really are concerned mostly about themselves and getting their needs met. And that comes from a place deep inside of them. I could psychoanalyze that all day long. We're not going to do that in this episode, and you don't want me to.
Oh, I do. I think.
Well, I can psychoanalyze that. There are reasons why.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
We know people who are selfish.
Yeah, and I think those of us that know those people that are that way don't expect them to be thoughtful. Like if all of a sudden they were thoughtful about something,
you're like, wow.
We'd be like, who are you?
Yeah.
Right? Like, where'd that come from?
And you still, you know them and you like them and maybe you love them. They're not there. You just know what their limitations are, and they're not the most thoughtful people. These people, to me personally, can be taxing and exhausting. You know, they may have a great personality. They may be a fun person to go out with and be around, and maybe they're really good conversationalists. Like maybe they have a lot of gifts. One thing is that, you know,
that's not one.
They're not going to be there for you if you need them, and they're not going to think much of you. You know, they're all about themselves. So there are 3 buckets there, right?
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. So, because you talk to a lot of people, right? So is it more jarring to come across a person that is not thoughtful, and all of a sudden they are for a moment, or the person that seems to be or presents as thoughtful all the time, and then something's got them spinning sideways for a second and they're not thoughtful at all? Like, which one would you say would like grab your attention more than the opposite?
I don't know. Probably, I don't know which more than the other. I mean, the person who is, you think of them as just kind of always being like a selfish person, and all of a sudden they do something really kind and thoughtful, it strikes you, right? It strikes you. It's like, wow, that was really nice. It was really thoughtful of you to do that for me.
Yeah.
People, I think we always need to throw people grace and give them the opportunity to make behavior changes. And I have seen that, and it's really nice to see. It's a pleasant surprise. You know, you get used to them being a certain way, and when they do something that's, you know, to the positive, you know, I've known people who are pretty darn selfish, but when, you know, someone has been sick and really needed, you know, extra help, they are there. They do show up.
Yeah.
I've seen people, selfish people, in those situations where there's a need in the family, and they still don't show up. They just don't. They don't show up. So, you know, it's a pleasant surprise when you see that person, you know, behave and show and give us a great example of, wow, you know, because I think it's hard for people to change. You know, I used to say for years, think in my practice and say this in my practice to certain clients, I don't think people change. And to this degree, I still sort of do think that way. I do think that people can change and people do change, but it's gotta be something really big in their life that they're threatened they're gonna lose. They're gonna lose their spouse, they're gonna lose a marriage, they're gonna lose their family, they're gonna lose a job. It's usually the personal life though. Maybe they're a bit narcissistic, and the only reason why they're changing and looking at themselves, because narcissists don't really want to look at their narcissism, you know, and they're going to look at it and they're going to eat some humble pie and do some deep work. And this is in psychotherapy. Sometimes it's coaching, but mostly therapy, because they're so afraid that they're going to lose their family, and they're concerned about what that might look like. They love the image.
Well, it's scary for them.
It's scary,
right?
Because there's a fractured self deep inside of that individual. But on the surface, they're very concerned about what it looks like. And there's security in there for them too. So I think that people do change and can become more thoughtful, but I think it's got to be something big in their life that's kind of whacking them on the head, and they're getting a wake-up call.
Yeah.
You know, I have seen people who are really thoughtful and I never think to myself, what's going on? Well, I never think, why are they not being thoughtful, when they have tended in the past to not show up, not be there, not be present. I've thought to myself, something's going on with them. What's going on with them? Something's happening in their life. Or I hear clients tell me, you know, that person's always there. They're always they're like my ride or die. They're always in my corner. They've got my back. And now they don't. And I always think to myself, you might want to find out what's going on with them. Something's going on, because so.
That's interesting, because you see what you just did. So if the person normally comes from a place from being thoughtful, and all of a sudden they're not, it speaks to that person. But the person that's not thoughtful, and all of a sudden they are for a second, it speaks more to what they're probably dealing with, right? Than them as a person. Like, they're thoughtful because they see you going through something bad, and they're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna be nice. I'm gonna give you, you know, some patience, some grace. Versus the opposite. If you see that, like you just said, it like sticks out like a sore thumb, where it's like, oh, that person's dealing with something.
I think the more self-centered bucket individual it's a nice, pleasant surprise. I think the other person, it's a surprise that they're not there for you. And okay, now I'll speak for myself here. It's like, oh, wait, what's going on with them?
Yeah.
Because they're acting unusual. I've heard, like I said earlier, I've heard so many clients talk about this with friends and family members.
Yeah.
And those that I know well, those who have been with me for years, I know of these people in their family too. And I will say to them, and we're both nodding in agreement, right? My client and I, like, okay, that's unusual. Something's going on with them, and throw them grace. And if you can't talk to them because you're going through your crisis and you need them, but they're going through their thing, just give them that space, and you can circle back to it maybe in the future. Let's find other people for you to rely on and lean on right now during your time of need. That person just can't be there for you right now. And it's a market difference.
Yeah. And I think it's comforting too, because you know that person's baseline. Like, you know, that person comes from a place of being thoughtful, right? So you know they're going back there. They just have to get through whatever it is that's got them spinning sideways at the moment.
Yeah.
But they're going to go back to that person that you're used to being with.
Because that's probably their foundation.
Yes.
That's their core. That's their character.
It's their base, right? Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I think it's all character.
Yeah.
To some degree, right?
Yeah. I mean, good.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like I said, when we finished the session, I thought, that's so unusual. I think about thoughtfulness. I think about, and I acknowledge in my mind, or I'll tell people who are thoughtful, maybe thank you, but I don't talk about it very much, So that's what we're doing this today.
It's important to me that the supplements I take are of the highest quality. And that's why for 5 years, I've been drinking AG1. Unlike many supplement brands, AG1 conducts relentless testing to set the standard for purity and potency. I know I can trust what's in every scoop of AG1 because it's tested for 950 contaminants and banned substances, while the industry standard typically only tests for 10. Taking care of my health shouldn't be complicated, and AG1 simplifies this by covering my nutritional basis and setting myself up for success in just 60 seconds. AG1's ingredients are heavily researched for efficacy and quality, and I love that every scoop also includes prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for gut support. So if you want to replace your multivitamin and more, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription at drinkag1.com/Anna. That's drinkag1.com/Anna. Check it out. You will not regret it.
So here are some tips for all of you if you want to be more thoughtful. And I think all of us could possibly be a little bit more thoughtful of others. So I got some hacks for you. All right, let's start with number 1. Practice active listening. Thoughtfulness begins with really listening to other people. This is a no-brainer for so many of you. I know who are listening, but just listening to people talk when they got stuff going on, you're being thoughtful. You're thinking about them. So that's number 1. I think it's a basic, but for those of you, who it's not basic, this is a big one. And if you could start doing this, kudos to you. Okay. Just start listening better. I think that we got to work on our listening skills. All right. And when you're listening, number 2, ask reflective questions. Reflect back to them that you're listening and really show them that you care about what they're saying and that you're understanding. And if you're not fully understanding, ask those clarifying questions. Give them the oxygen in the room. Let them talk and be in the present moment with them and listen to them. Don't turn it into, please don't do this. Don't turn it into, I remember when that happened to me, or I remember when my mom did that. Next thing you know, you're talking about yourself. It's very hard for people to do, and I'm asking you to start to develop awareness around that. Develop awareness around, I just completely hijacked this conversation, because many of us are doing that and we don't have the self-awareness to realize we're doing that. So number 1, practice listening. Number 2, ask those reflective questions. Get curious about the other person. and what it is they're saying. And if you feel like you want to start talking, pinch yourself.
Ouch.
Don't do it.
There you go.
Give them the floor.
Yeah.
Let them talk.
Yeah. So,
Really
so can we talk about a real life example of this right now? So you and I were in DC just yesterday,
Yep.
right? And we were at a family wedding, and we came across all kinds of circles of people with all kinds of conversations, right? Whether it was at that wedding, it was at a function after, it was at dinner with friends, it was, we interfaced with a lot of folks, right?
Yeah.
And I can imagine if we were to take a second and kind of go through that last 2 or 3 days, we could come up with examples of both ways with this, right?
Yeah.
Where it all worked out, and you had some thoughtful listening and some conversations where there was more listening than talking. And then there were others times where it was like nobody was listening to anybody.
Yeah.
Right? Not a lot, but like there were moments where it's like, okay, that person didn't listen to a word I just said.
Yeah. Did you feel that this weekend at all?
I mean, if I thought about it long enough, I could come up with examples of both. I don't want to because we just.
Yeah, I have felt that way before, but I have to say this weekend because there's so many people in my family, and there's a lot of players, and we were at dinner with my mom and my brothers, and then my good friend from high school and her husband, and then nieces and nephews, and yeah, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people. I have 24. Nephews and nieces on one side, just one side of the family. And this time was really nice. I felt that the smaller groups, dinner with 3 and 4 people, really allowed for deeper conversations, people really talking about their work, their kids, it was really nice.
For sure.
I didn't feel that way so much. And at the wedding, at the reception, that's a fun time, and that's not about you. That's about the bride and groom and the speeches, and the conversation at the table is light, and we're laughing.
No one's drilling deep on anything there.
Not a wedding.
It's not the place for that.
Yeah, I have felt that way before, but this weekend I felt that the relationships that were just continued. There's nothing good and nothing. Well, it was all good. It was nothing really bad. It was all good.
It was all good stuff. Yeah. And a big shout out. We had a couple super fans. We talked about the podcast a little bit, right? They know who they are. They're listening now. But just a shout out to them.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to them. It's always great to go home or to be around, friends from high school, college, or just to be in another part of the country, and people say, I love your podcast. So thank you for that.
You're like, what?
I know it throws me still.
Not all the time, but sometimes it is. It does. Yeah.
It's
like, oh, wow.
Yeah, I heard that episode, and I'm like, oh.
Or they talk about like a family member of theirs, and a relative.
We were talking.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, so and so listens to your podcast too, and we're like, oh, wow.
But they talk about like that's going on in my life, and I'm glad you talked about that.
Yeah.
It's wonderful because I realize that I never know who we're reaching. You just don't realize how far reaching podcasting goes. So thank you to all of you who are listening. And I'm going to stop for 1 second just to throw out to all of you who are listening. Remember, I have a group coaching program that's coming up. So if you want to work with me in a small, intimate setting, it's a group format. I'm only taking like 6 people. I'm not doing the bigger groups. I've done that before. This is smaller, so we're really going to do some deep dives and really get to know each other. Reach out to me, hello@AnnaMarcolini, email me, and let's get on an email and a call together, and I'll sign you up, okay? This is, if you want to work with me one-on-one, but you're thinking, it's not in the budget right now, you take advantage of group coaching, because I've done individual, I've done group myself as the client, as the participant. And group coaching is really wonderful. You're going to get a lot of work done with me in the group coaching format. I'm giving you the same knowledge, the same insights that I give to my individual coaching clients, but it's going to be in a group setting. Okay. So it's really, really wonderful. And I'm going to fast forward you 6 to 12 months, even more in your life through group coaching. Okay. I'm going to get you there, and I'm going to teach you the skills. I'm going to teach you what I know. And up until this point, you don't know, but 3 months from now, 4 months from now, now you're going to know. You're going to know what I learned. I'm teaching you the skills. Okay. So please don't hesitate. Reach out to me. Inquire about this group coaching. I've been doing this a long freaking time, and I know what I'm doing, okay? So I'm the real deal. I'm going to toot my own horn on this because I know what I'm talking about. I'm the real deal. I'm not a coach who just started a few years ago. I've been doing this for almost 3 decades. I know what I'm doing, and I know how to get you better, okay? So wanted to stop for a second just to throw that out to you as a reminder for the group coaching program.
There you go.
Okay. Number 3, how to be thoughtful towards other people. Be present in the moment. And I sort of just kind of said this. Be present. Make an effort. And I know so many of us today are dealing with our attention deficit minds, but make an effort. Put your phone down. Don't look at your phone when someone's talking. Don't put it away and really listen to them. Be mindful when you're talking with them about what it is they're presenting you with, and concentrate on what they're saying to you. Listen to what they're saying. Concentrate, okay? Make eye contact, with them. And really try to connect with them in a deeper way than maybe you have in the past with others, okay? This is really important. I think that we've lost the art of listening, and we've lost the art of conversation. And it's because of social media. It's because of our phones. It's because of our little computers that are in our pockets that I've got right here with me. I mean, we're all guilty of it. And there is a time and place to put that phone down, to don't even bring it to the table. Don't even, just don't look at it and let that person talk. Okay. That's really, really important. It's simple, but it's really important. Makes a person feel like you care about them.
Yeah. That one can be damaging. Like if you're on the opposite side of that, and somebody's doing that around you or to you, it's like, ugh, like what?
I think we've all been
What's
here.
up?
You just said. I mean, we've all been here. We know what it's like. I went out to dinner with a friend. This is probably more than 10 years ago. And, my kids are older. She had little kids at the time. And I couldn't believe it. Like, it really did affect my relationship with her that was kind of the beginning of the end. And it was like, how you have relationships where there's no falling out. You just kind of fall off with each other. Now, my kids at that point were in high school and middle school, and she had littler ones, but she threw out, and we made, this effort to go out to dinner because we hadn't seen each other in so long. We were busy with our lives. We both work outside the home and both raising kids. And she picked up her phone probably 3 or 4 times throughout our dinner. Dinner was probably like an hour and a half. I was talking and she actually picked up her phone, and I was talking and she was like this. Now, if you're looking on YouTube, you can see me doing this, but she's like, yeah. She was not listening.
No.
And then one time I was talking, I don't know, there was a pause in the conversation. She actually picked up her phone and started laughing at a text that came to her. Was smiling at the phone, a text, and it was something that like her family member had sent her about one of her nephews or nieces. And she's like, I'm sorry, I have to see this. And then she's like, oh, you got to see this. And she showed it to me. And I'm like, I have no interest right now in your family members. Like, we are here to have a conversation with each other. I have no offense. I mean, I love children, but I don't really want to see that video right now.
Yeah.
And that really, I couldn't believe it, but she didn't think much of it. And it really affected me. I thought, I don't think I'm going to do that again. I think that times have changed, and the relationship we had 15, 20 years ago is not the same. And we're in different places in our lives. And you couldn't wait 45 minutes till you got in the car to look at that video. So, I mean, I hope I have never done that to anybody, but there's been times when, I think we've done it to each other. We are standing in the kitchen, or the kids are around, and you're talking to me, I'm talking to you. We've both done it to each other because we get annoyed. And it's like, I'm talking to you right now. Put your phone down. And you're like, what? I'm just, what? We get defensive. What? Like, I'm talking to you. I say to you all the time, I want your undivided attention. And we're pretty good with each other, but we're not perfect.
Yeah.
We're
not.
It.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
So, this is a lesson for all of us. Be present in the moment. Let the person talk and listen to them.
Yeah. I think I'm sensitive to that, especially like when you're out and you've got you're going to a place that either gives you great service or gives you terrible service.
Yeah.
I'm sensitive to that because of the business that I'm involved in. So, and I said this to you out loud when we were on vacation. Remember I said, this is the first hotel I've ever gone into, and not one person that worked at the front desk or worked at the valet desk outside
smiled at us, said hello,
even said
welcomed us, greeted
anything.
us back. Nothing.
Like,
nothing. Didn't even smile, actually.
I was
didn't crack a smile.
Blown away with
that. This is like a 4-star hotel. It's a It's like the flagship hotel.
Yeah.
Of this brand, and I'm not going to throw the name.
We won't drop it out there, but like it just
feel like it because it was such bad.
It was
service.
bad.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you noticed it, but like we went out once and we were getting taken to our table by the hostess, and she turned around and she's got AirPods in. She's like not even.
No, where was this?
I was like, wait, what's happening?
Where was this?
When we went out for breakfast the other day.
She had AirPods?
She had AirPods in. I'm like, are you
that was the worst service we've had in a long time.
It was, but that blew me away.
Was bad too.
Yeah.
That was funny. That was bad too. I don't think I really cared because I was so into my sister and brother-in-law. We were having breakfast with them and we were catching up. But that service was really, the food was terrible. Yeah, whatever. I don't want to be negative. I usually love breakfast food, but that place.
Yeah.
You said the people
I think, well, it was just
complaining 3 times. The lady got from her table. That happens, right? It happens wherever you go.
It happens.
You're talking more about customer service.
Well, no, but I'm not really, because I think it's if you're in that position,
listening,
you should have at least a thoughtful
listening. I didn't understand it.
Have a thoughtful presentation about yourself.
That's interesting. I didn't realize she was doing that.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I wasn't paying attention.
Anyways,
okay.
That's an example of what not to do.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I think the next one is to really consider the impact of what you say before you say it. So, and this basically is what I have been preaching for 20 years and more than that now, 25 years to my clients. Respond, don't react. So respond to people, don't react. React is knee jerk. When you get the thing on your knee, when you go to the doctor and your knee your automatic reflect, your knee goes up, that's knee jerk, right? Don't knee jerk. Take a deep breath, and you're going to see this in the emotionally charged conversations with loved ones usually, and it's with coworkers too. When you want to say something, take a deep breath, literally take a deep breath, give yourself an adult timeout, and respond. When you take that breath, it gives you, a minute to kind of take agency of yourself. Then you can say something, okay? But really try to consider how it is you're going to come across, what it is you might say, and it might actually hurt the situation, hurt the conversation. Okay.
Most times I think it would, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, if I catch myself in a spot like that where it's like there's a thing that I want to say, I think I'll do the pause and then I try to come back with a question instead of a response or a reaction.
Yeah.
So and whether it's a question on like, hey, can you help me understand, or, whatever it might be, but I'll try and come back with a question, because then that gives me a little bit more time.
You're asking them to go deeper.
Yes.
You ask them a question.
Yeah. And it also buys me some time to maybe like, okay, inside myself, relax.
Yeah.
All is well. There's no need to make this worse.
Right.
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 So I don't know.
Okay, the next one, number 5, empathy is a guiding principle. So thoughtfulness grows from empathy. So this is, for those of you who don't know, empathy is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. So there's sympathy and there's empathy. Sympathy is, I feel for you. I'm sorry you're going through that. Hear that a lot. And there are times when it is appropriate to be sympathetic. I'm sympathetic to your plight and sympathetic to what it is you're dealing with. Empathy is another level. Empathy is going deeper, really giving somebody the emotional energy that is within you and giving it towards them. Thinking about what it might be like to walk a mile in their shoes, trying to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And people pick up on empathy. People also have a radar for sympathy, or when somebody is like, sorry, that's happening, and sometimes people, not every situation calls for sympathy. I'm sorry, not every situation calls for empathy. Sometimes there are situations that call for, just being sympathetic to somebody. But if this is somebody you care about, somebody, very well, and they're sharing something with you that they're upset about, I hope you're being empathic. You're showing them empathy, okay? Yeah. So that is, give them your undivided attention. Take the time. I know you may feel impatient. I know you may have other things that are going on. You have work to do. You've got emails to get back to. You've got to go. You've got conversations you have to have. Your mind is taken up with other things. Try to, when they're talking to you, listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
And go there. Go there inside yourself. to be empathic towards them.
And I think you also, I mean, not everybody's on YouTube, but I think you just showed the difference too. Because you just gave us examples of what to say or how to respond on both sides of the fence. And I watched your facial expressions, and one was like, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, it's like, whatever. And the other one was like, you actually, I felt warmness coming from you.
Yeah.
Right. And it was, maybe it was the way you smiled was different, or your eyes were, there was something different about the way you were looking at us. Right.
I think that there are times, like I just said, I mean, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but there are times when, you know, it is okay and it's appropriate to be sympathetic. I have an empathy gene, so it's easy for me to be empathic towards others. I can be empathic towards, and many of you who are listening and watching this, you are the same. It's easy to just go there and feel someone else's, you know, plight, you know, their sadness, their life has thrown them a really tough curveball, and they're struggling, whether it be somebody in the post office or somebody at the checkout, you know, somebody in the checkout, you know, lane, you know, I mean, it can happen anywhere. And I think that, you know, for me, it's easy to go there for them and just, you know, I can get really down, you know, get upset and disturbed and not stop thinking about people. You know, it's almost empathy that goes too far. That's what I think that's why I'm in the profession I'm in. But I've had to, and you've heard me in other episodes talk about, I've had to really have boundaries around my empathy, because especially when I worked in oncology, because I didn't take care of my empathic self. And what happened was I burnt out, which is not good. And that was the last week's episode. You know, manage your stress or it will manage you. And it did manage me. I ended up leaving the whole field of oncology because I had such empathy and I didn't manage it. Right. You know? And it wasn't appropriate to be sympathetic towards my cancer patients. No, it's not appropriate. But, you know, somebody telling you something in the grocery store and you're walking out with a couple bags in your hand, like a strange person saying, you know, I just might have a flat tire. Like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. You know, I mean, should I stop and help them? I mean, no. Like, did you call AAA? Did you tell the manager of the grocery store? Like,
right.
Okay, good luck.
There's things that you can do, right? You can.
But that's like sympathy, you know? So all that to say, listen to your inner self. Listen, you know, when these situations come up in your life, and they do come up in your life, they're going to come up and they will continue to come up, you know, as you walk through life's journey. You know, think about, is this a moment to be sympathetic or is this a moment to show empathy?
Yeah.
A lot of times it's a moment to show empathy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, notice the little things about people. You know, thoughtful gestures are so, so important and go a long way for people. Remembering somebody's preference, remembering that somebody loves yellow roses, remembering that somebody loves a certain burger place. So, hey, we're meeting, or what are you doing right now? Can I come over? And going and picking up some burgers. You know, just remembering what they like. Hey, I saw this, you know, I was at the stationery store. I know you love the stationery. I know you love these types of cards. And go pick some up for them and get that. Those are such pleasant surprises. You know, or I know that you love these croissants or these cupcakes at the bakery. I was in town and I brought you some. And you just drop them off. And maybe you leave them at the front door. You text them, hey, I have something for you. Do you have a minute? That is so, so thoughtful. That's Maria. My sister's like that. I wish I was more like that. I love that.
Yeah.
But it's noticing the little things about people. That goes a long way. What I do in noticing things is I notice when people speak well. I notice when people stand up for themselves. I notice when somebody is well dressed, and I call that out. I will say, you look great. I love your outfit today. You look beautiful. I will do that. That's very easy for me, and that's second nature. I love when somebody I do it with my clients all the time. Like, I'll say, I love it you did that. You know, I think that that's really important. I think people need to hear it. Or I will, you know, if I'm at a networking event or I'm at a speaking event, someone's speaking, and someone's like knocked it out of the park, they killed it. I'm like, that's important. You killed that. You did a great job. I loved it when you said this and that. You had everybody applauding you. Like, you really changed the environment in the room when you did that. I mean, that goes a long way. People don't forget that you said that to them. They don't forget. We all need that and want that in our lives. We just sometimes don't know how to ask for it.
Yeah.
So do the other person a favor and tell them.
Yeah.
It's really
important. That's a big confidence booster for that person to receive that.
Yeah. Because they're practicing. Maybe they're they put a few outfits together before they put that outfit on that morning. Are they practicing that speaking? Or, they practiced, how they want to show up at work. And if you've seen little subtle changes, notice those things and let them know.
Yeah.
It does help you feel more confident. I mean, I talk about confidence all the time, and I tell my clients, do you want to get more confident? You got to practice. So you got to get vulnerable. You got to fall down. You got to fail forward. And you do it over and over and over and over again. And there's where confidence comes from. But when you're doing it and you feel like you flubbed something, but you do it better, and someone comes up to you and says, you did a really good job at that. Hey, you did a good job at that presentation. Or, you really spoke up. I like how you talk to your mom. Like, that's not like you. Well, you're practicing your confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we need to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you hear that sincere feedback, you're like, ooh, that's a feel good.
Exactly.
Right?
And number 7 is show gratitude and acknowledgement. It's the same. It's really just following in line from noticing the little things. Show gratitude towards others. People who are thoughtful, they really have made it a habit to express gratitude and acknowledgement to those around them. Simple acts like thanking someone for their time. That's really important. Or acknowledging the effort that they made goes a long way in building positive relationships. So we often say, thank you for your time. I'll say it in an email. Like, I'll say, thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this. That's important.
It's big.
It's really, really big. And I think we sometimes forget that.
Yeah. I try and go out of my way. Am I perfect with it? No. But like, I try to go out of my way. If we have like a person that comes in and does a presentation, a lunch and learn, whatever it is, right, I try to go up to them after and just say thank you, like give them some feedback, some positive, like, I love this or that, and just thank them, for coming in and for their time. Because I think that goes a long way. Because a lot of people just get up and they're rolling, right? They're like, oh, I'm on to the next thing, Well,
the participants get up and leave because they're meeting and they have to get back to work. And don't say anything.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so number 8 is self-awareness and emotion regulation. So being thoughtful really also involves being aware of your own emotions and managing them. We don't talk about this a whole lot with thoughtfulness, but, reflect on how you are showing up in intense emotional conversations, okay? So, your emotional state can really affect another person's behavior and their interactions with you. So if you're showing up angry and all keyed up or your volume and your voice is up and you're defensive, you're defended and you're not being thoughtful of the other person. And you may feel that way, and that's okay to feel that way, but you got to regulate the emotion in the moment. All right. So I'm not telling you not to feel that way, but what can you do to manage it right then and there? And then you go to your therapy session or you go to a coaching session, and we'll talk about it as long as you want. Later.
Let's break that down.
We'll break that down later. But
that is a tough one.
It's a big one. Yeah, it's a big one.
I think it's tough because I think we all land on the other side of this where it's like we go with what human instinct tells us that we should do. But you know what I mean? Like the reaction is like, oh, like you're angry, you're frustrated, you're upset, you're mad, you're like, oh, and then you get defensive.
But here's the thing, Tim. This is a big one, and maybe one I will do an episode on. Most of us are not as self-aware as we think we are. I think I talked about this before, but I did a long survey on self-awareness a few years ago, and I'm thinking, I'm a therapist, I'm a life coach, I'm really self-aware, I'm self-aware of myself, I'm aware. I've worked a long time on this, my schooling, my knowledge, my schooling, and my own therapy, and doing all the work I've done in consultation groups. And I did so bad on this test. I did so bad. I was pissed. Like, wait a minute. I had like a lot of improvements to make. I was actually not that self-aware.
Yeah.
And I think I'm more self-aware than most.
Who's to say?
I'll pat myself on the back. But, truth be told, I'm kind of joking. There's always room to improve. And I continue to need to work every day on being more self-aware. So, it's hard to really take an objective look at oneself. We call that the observing ego. It's hard to do. It's hard to.
Well, it's really hard in real time.
to look at how you show up.
Yeah.
How you show up in life, how you show up at work, how you show up with your friends, how you show up with your kids, how you show up with your mom, how you show up, with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your life partner, your spouse. I mean, it's hard to see. And it's not realistic to think that we're going to make massive improvements in a week's time. But these are just little exercises and ways that we can practice having more self-awareness. And that's that blind spot work I've talked about here on the podcast before, but asking others, how do I look to you? How do I show up to you? And it's hard to hear. That's more advanced coaching work because you got to be able to listen to what people tell you about how you're showing up. I think it's really important though. So, if you're saying something to me and I'm working on being more thoughtful, let's say towards you, and you say something to me about, how I was in a conversation or a situation, like maybe we have people over, the kids are all here for dinner and I say something obnoxious or something, and I don't know, and you're calling me out, but I don't think you're right. I'm like, well, I didn't see it that way. That's not my perspective. That's not how the conversation went. What's happening is I'm getting defensive.
Yeah.
And this is a real life one actually for you and I. And this
100%. You and I could role play this right now, and it would be interesting.
And it's hard because I want to. It happened recently with the kids were here. Some of the kids and some of the nephew and niece were here, and boyfriends and girlfriends, and we got into a heated conversation as we all do in our family about an intense topic. Most people, our kids and our kids' friends, are like, we don't know a family like you. Nobody in our family, no one talks about the things you guys talk about because
at dinner.
I think because I'm a therapist, and we talk about everything. We do the deep dive in everything. Sometimes it can be too much, but it's a lot of fun. And I think the kids enjoy it.
It's a lot of fun.
And there are a lot of vulnerable conversations.
Yeah.
So, okay. So that's a good example. So you'll say something to me later and we'll all get defensive in the moment. And what I need to work on is I need to work on regulating my emotion in the moment and not get defensive because you're saying something to me that I don't like. And it's just a conversation. You're not trying to put me down. You're not being, air quote, mean towards me, but my ego is involved here. And I don't like that you're saying something going against my argument. And I feel inside of myself, I feel my defensiveness and I feel I'm getting a little dysregulated emotionally.
Yeah.
My defensiveness is my emotional dysregulation. I'm feeling irritated. I'm feeling like I want to defend myself. I'm feeling like I have a thought and I want to kind of be right. I'm going to be really honest here. I kind of want to be right. I kind of want to maybe one up you. This isn't all the time, but this did happen recently. And I'm not regulating my emotions. And it's really hard to do in the moment. And I talk with my clients about this ad nauseum. This is why this is a life's work. And this is why this is life's practice. You have to practice and practice and practice and practice this. And I have been trying to practice and work on it myself. So several conversations back with our daughter, she was calling me out on something with another family member. And she said, why did you something in the past? Why did you do that? And I said, I don't know why. And she's not totally wrong. And my daughter said, wow. She's like, wow, Mom. And she's like, that will be really helpful for her to know that. It was actually a really good statement. Yeah. She was taken aback because I was been working on this. I've been working on not being defensive and accepting that I'm wrong. I'm wrong in situations. I'm wrong in relationships. I'm not always right. I F up. And she's like, that was really good, Mom. Like the fact that you just said that maybe you're not right and that maybe she's got some good points there. That's growth, And then a couple weeks ago with you, we were talking about something and I did get defensive. But I got annoyed with you. And in the conversation went on. I don't think anybody else really noticed it. There were about 8 of us there. But the next day I thought about, how I kind of was showing up to you. And I apologized to you. I said, I'm sorry that I did what I said to you, what I said in front of everybody. And you didn't seem really upset about it. It wasn't.
No, not at all.
I know, but you did acknowledge that I did do that to you.
Yeah.
You did. Because I did do it.
Yeah.
I was said something obnoxious to you in front of everybody else. I shouldn't have done that. You're my husband. And that wasn't right to kind of call you out in public like that. but I'm working on it, I got dysregulated emotionally, and that's what happens is we get reactive.
Right. Well, and so then it's probably a good thing to just say also that, like, and I'd have to really rewind my brain on this. There probably was something I wanted to say back to you in real time. And thank goodness I took that moment of pause. And maybe then I did ask you a question. I don't remember, but I don't.
You quieted. You didn't say much. We didn't know. You didn't really say a whole lot.
But there was no, it didn't turn into this.
You were annoyed with me.
Tennis
you were
match.
Annoyed with me, and it kind of shut down the conversation.
I don't know. I think
it did.
Yeah.
I don't remember what came of it, but I mean, we went on to other things.
Yeah.
And we weren't, like I said, we weren't. But no, we have been in fights before and gotten mad at each other.
The point of this one is, though, it didn't go there. Like, neither you nor I let it go there, right? Like, you said what you said, whatever it was. I don't even remember. I had a reaction which didn't basically throw gas on just that little fire. And then it just kind of went a different direction.
But it was more, but the point for me is that I'm working on my emotion regulation.
Sure.
And it shows up for me in these conversations usually with family members, not even friends. It's with family members, and we have these deep dives. And we love these deep dives. We often have really rich conversations where we learn a lot. We'll talk about history. We'll talk about religion. We will talk about politics sometimes, not a lot. But we do have these deep conversations, usually around emotional intelligence and psychology. And then people will tell stories and talk about their personal lives sometimes. This one, so they tend to be good conversations, but they can sometimes get too personal.
Yeah.
And I think that, anyways, not too personal. I shouldn't say too personal, but maybe not even too vulnerable. I don't think you can get too vulnerable, but kind of like wanting to win the argument, which that was dumb. Anyways, I've been trying to work on it. That's a really big one, to work on your emotion regulation. And emotion regulation can be just getting defensive, like low-key defensive. Like someone's telling you something and it's about you, when you're trying to be thoughtful of them and they're talking to you about something they're upset about with you. What is your reaction? You're going to get your back up and you like kind of put your dukes up, like, all right, we fighting? We beefing? And it's like, no, just regulate your emotion. Let them say, take a deep breath.
Yeah. And I think we talked about last week or the week before is like ownership at that point. That's probably the best thing you can do. Even if you don't feel like you need to own everything or that you should be owning everything, do it anyways.
Well, here's the thing. What are you afraid of? I always ask that question.
What are you afraid of?
When you're defensive, ask yourself, what am I afraid of right now? What am I afraid of? I'm getting defensive. Why am I I feel the defensiveness in me. I feel my stomach will churn. For other people, it's like their shoulders go up high. They start to feel tightness. They're not breathing properly. They feel like tightness in their back and their neck. Why is it happening? What are you afraid of? Why are you being defensive? You're getting dysregulated. It's always about a fear. We're protecting ourself or ego. If you leave your ego at the door and you say, let the ego go. Bye. You're going to go away for a while. You will find that you will show up differently and you will show up more thoughtful towards other people. I can almost guarantee it.
Yeah.
So that's your tip for today. If you take anything away from it, from this episode today, from anything that we're talking about, is try to leave your ego at the door when you're being thoughtful of others. Okay. It's about love, and love is really not about ego. Ego is not involved. So slow down. Number 9, slow down. In a fast-paced world, remind people to slow down, whether it's in making decisions or responding to others. So you just said that, take a deep breath, slow down, pause.
Yeah.
You don't have to respond right away.
You don't have to respond at all.
You listen.
Right?
Thoughtfulness in the beginning, we talked about actively listening.
Yeah.
And just, take the time to reflect and to process. And maybe, that's being thoughtful. Maybe you're in a situation with someone and maybe you're going to leave that conversation. You're not going to say anything. You're going to go home and you're going to reflect and you're going to process it maybe with another person. Then you're going to go back to that person and say, hey, can we circle back to that conversation? That's being thoughtful. I've really thought about what you said. I've really thought about that conversation. There's a few things that I'd like to say. That's a really wonderful way.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like it.
And then the last one is be intentionally kind. Be kind. We're hearing it more and more today. The political climate in this country, actually the global climate of what we're dealing with, there's a lot of hatred. There's a lot of vitriol. There's so much hostility. You can make the change. Be the change. You, Tim, me, Anna, and all of you listening and watching, be kind. Go out of your way to be kind to other people. Encourage those small, deliberate acts of kindness in everyday life. Hold the door for somebody that's coming in behind you, or, let them come through the door first going into the grocery store. Giving people compliments, like I said, complimenting people, just being a supportive presence, showing up for your friends, showing up for your family members, being there. Do you need me to go to the doctor with you? Do you need me to go you're getting divorced? Do you need me to go to the courthouse? What do you need? Let me know what you need. How can I help? You know how much I appreciate whenever I've had like dinner parties or, Thanksgiving, and people come in and say, what can I do? How can I help? People just pick up, a sponge and just start washing dishes. It's really very thoughtful. And those are just little things. They probably take you 10 or 15 minutes, but washing dishes when there's a bunch of people over, it's really helpful. Just one less thing you have to do. Okay. So it starts with making small intentional acts towards other people, and it makes them feel cared for. It makes them, know and feel like you're thinking about them. Okay. So I'm going to go through them again one more time. I have my list here. So ways that we can all be more thoughtful. Number 1, practice active listening. Number 2, ask reflective questions. Number 3, be present in the moment when you're with that person. Number 4, consider the impact before speaking. Consider your impact before you speak. Number 5, use empathy as your guide. Number 6, notice the little things about them. Call it out. Number 7, practice gratitude and acknowledgement. 8, self-awareness and emotion regulation. I think that this can be the toughest, and it's one that we all can improve upon. Number 9, slow down. And number 10, be intentionally kind. If you go back, write all these down, make this list, and you work on one of these a week, you're going to be a more thoughtful person. And you're going to actually develop more sense of love for yourself in doing this. When we give to others, you're going to love yourself more. You're going to know you're doing some good stuff and how you're showing up in this world for other people.
Bingo.
Okay?
Thank you. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Good chat.
All right, everyone. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast with 5 stars. Share it with anyone who you think would find this to be of value. And if you want to work with me, you know where to find me, annamarcolin.com. Email is hello@annamarcolin.com. And as always, mad love. Until next time.